Hello, welcome back. We've just finished off covering the main shape node group, and now we're going to do the displacement FX. Here we go. Let's get into the effects. So obviously this one needs some displacement. As you can see, I have some set up here, and the displacement amount is controlled for everything in the ISB from this slider here, the displacement amount. Excuse me. So at the moment I got it to 0.8. If you went silly with it, depending on what you're making, if it's a brick wall, then you know you're probably never really going to want to go much further than that. But 0.8 is about what I like. 0.8. There we go. The mid-level, I'm not 100% sure. I think it means where the displacement starts from, but the only time I've seen an issue with that is when I've made a corner, like I showed you in the setup video, that you get these weird displacement issues around the corner, and that's only if the mid-level is set to anything above 0. So it's just default 0. I can't think of a situation where you would want to do anything with the mid-level. But I'm sure it's there for a reason. It's just not one that I use, other than if there's an issue. As I was saying, that's usually because it's on 0.5 and not 0, but that won't be a problem for you because it's default 0 now. Okay, so to access the FX, I've done this many times. I've been like, yeah, I need some cracks. Yeah, I've got to get some random chunks. And I turn it up, and I'm like, yeah, let's have a look. And then nothing happens. That's because I haven't turned the effects on. So at the very top is the effects. Am I on 6 or 5.5? The effects mix. So put that in, and then the effects will start to function correctly. The cracks. The file you've downloaded might not have these values, and I've had to play this morning to get the values in the right place. So, excuse me. I'm going to upload a new one where these values are default, but if you've downloaded the ISB 3.3 before I've changed these values, just copy these values to start. So you want overall scale as 0.5 in the filter, scale 0.3, detail 16, 0.5, 0, 1, and the same here. I'll explain what they are, but just put these values in. So 0.02 for position 1, 0.04 for position 2. Moving on to the crack mask ramp, 0, 0.5, next, 0.2, 16, 0, 0, done. So just make sure that your values before you begin match these if they don't already. Anyone who downloads the ISB after this tutorial will have these set. But for you guys, you're already veterans, you're going to need to just copy these values. Okay, so let's mix in the crack. You want some crack, but yeah, I'd love the crack. Well, let's have it then. Let's put the crack in. Bosh. There we are. So now we see the cracks, and this may be slightly confusing, the mask. It's so confusing, in fact, that I've had to re-record this section of the tutorial because I get confused. So this will clear it all up. Lovely. So what's going on here? We've put the cracks up, we've mixed them in with the FX mixer, cracks mix. I should put cracks FX mix. And this is being masked by the crack mask. So the crack mask is hiding areas and revealing areas so as to create a much more natural crack look. And what's essentially happening with the crack mask is, it may seem counterintuitive, but you'll get used to it. The white areas are where the crack is not appearing, and the black areas is where the crack is appearing. So again, it's a noise filter, so you can see, you can picture it, all this is white, and then you've got the black areas here. It's quite it's a low scale. If we put the scale up to 1, you can imagine what's going to happen. The noise pattern will increase in detail, and now it's just, the noise patterns are much more erratic, so you're getting little chunks. But 0.2 seems to do it for me. So again, the white is where the crack isn't, and the black is where the crack is. And to control how much of the mask is on or off, you use the crack mask ramp. So again, position 1, position 2. Position 1 is the black on the color ramp, position 2 is the white. And if you bring the white slider to the left to join closer to the black, you'll basically be removing the mask. I mean, increasing the mask. So now we've got less crack. So more white, less crack. More black, more crack. So if we put white all the way to the right, it's going to be, you know, mostly black grey, and that's why we can see all of the mask. And if you, let's say we put the crack mask to 0.6 with the white, sorry, so we can see we've only got a bit of mask. In fact, no, let me just do something else. Let me put 0.4, so we're using a lot of mask, and we've only got small areas. Now, these areas, you know, this area here isn't massively visible as a crack. You're aware it's there. But if you bring the black closer, again, just like a noise filter, so 0.35, it will increase the visibility here, as you see. So now they're very much definite cracks, and that's just because I've brought the black slider closer to the white slider, and I've basically done that and clamped them together. The contrast is high. There's a lot of black and then a lot of white. There's not much grey. Whereas if we put the black slider back to the left, obviously black is going further away, and then we've got much more of a smoother transition. It's going white, 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 grey, 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 black, 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 grey, 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 white, 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 white. You know what I mean? And scale filter is the same as usual. You know, as I say, if you're picturing that this is white and this is black, you can still mess around with these. We can. I suppose I should do something. So let's bring more crack back by adding less white, and even bringing that forward to make them a bit more visible. I'm just sliding the black to the right, and now they're very visible. So if we took the detail, actually, I almost confused myself. So what's going on here? The crack mask filter, it's got, you know, you've got a scale here, but you've also got this filter and this filter. So the filter for the crack mask is specifically for the crack mask in its entirety. Unlike this, like I mentioned, this filter is for the edges. This filter is specifically for the entirety of the mask. So if we take out the detail, it might look a bit more definite. I mean, it's difficult to see, but if we put the roughness up to 1, it will probably start to get a bit bitty. Yeah, it's starting to creep in some of the areas, and in actual fact, if we allowed more of the mask, the cracks in, so we just add less white or remove some white. Excuse me. Yeah. So that's the crack mask in a nutshell as well. I think that's all you need to know. But just as I say, just remember that the more white you add to the crack mask, if you're sliding the white slider to the left, you're removing the crack and you're increasing the effect of the mask. Whereas if you add black, the transition, whatever cracks are available and visible, will be more visible if you bring the black slider closer to the white. Yeah, that's the crack mask. Done. Let's move on. Excuse me. Now, as to the cracks themselves, here we go. Overall scale is 0.5, so they're quite big. If we put it up to 1, the cracks would get smaller. And as I say, they're only going to appear in the areas you've set the crack mask ramp to. So, again, this is all white, and these blotches are black. So, but those cracks are too big for me, so I will reduce it to 2.2. Excuse the cut. I've just been messing around with the cracks because I wasn't explaining it very well, so I'm going to have another stab at explaining it. I've just added more white in the crack mask. I've removed a lot of the white so that I can reveal the crack, so I can better explain what's going on here. Okay, so the crack shape here. The overall scale applies to the entirety of the cracks, so they will get larger. And this, the filter here, is for the edges, the wobbliness of the edges. So if I zoom in a little, you can see all this nastiness there. So that's the roughness. So I'm just going to click drag both of them, put it to 0, and put the detail down to 0. It should become quite clean. Not as the distortion is also on 10. No, there you go. So now we've got very clean cracks. They're a bit wobbly because we have some scale, and the scale is how much warping happens to these edges. Because it's on quite a low scale, it's very wobbly. If we were to put the scale up to 10, it would probably get a little janky. Yeah, there you go. So now this filter is just for how the edges are displayed. So because we've put the scale up to 10, it's wobbling excuse me, it's wobbling in a small like that. But if we put the scale back down to 1, it's just going to make these wobbly bits larger. So you're affecting the scale of the cracks, and that just reduces very sharp straight edges that you would normally get with the Voronoi as a default. These controls mean you can mangle up the edges a little bit. I like detail, so I'm going to bring my detail back. And I like a little bit of roughness, so 0.5, maybe 0.5 here too. No, maybe. Let's look. 0.5. Yes, and then maybe a bit of distortion too. What's that going to do? Yeah. Alright. Okay, so that's, as I say, that's how you create the edges. So this overall scale is for the size of the cracks, and these filters are for the actual crack edges. The crack shape ramp is, as usual, the same as the color ramp. So you've got position 2 is the white, position 1 is the black. At the moment they're quite close together, so the contrast is sharpish. So if I put that to 0.03 and bring the white and the black closer together, these gaps will reduce. Not a great deal, but if I go 0.022, they're very close together. Okay, as you see. So you can do that, and let me just bring the crack mask back actually. I've got to add more white, and I think I was on 0.55. More white means less crack. 0.5, 0.5, I don't know, 8. Something on my eye, excuse me. That'll do. Ow, get out of my eye. Not ideal in a recording. Where have you just come from? Okay. So yeah, that's how the crack mask works and the cracks work. If I put that back to 1, again you'll see all the crack, because more black means more visibility. So that's what they look like. But using the crack mask, you can hide sections. Alright, so that is cracks done. Next, let's turn the cracks off actually. You can use them all at the same time, but I've normally find that one is useful enough. So random chunks. This is my favourite one and is very useful for lots of materials. So just plop that in and you'll get a dramatic change. So yeah, as you can see, it's just taking chunks out of the geometry, big bubbly chunks. So, and the filter is here. You can see, you know, what's happening here. This is, again, I think it is a noise filter. Yes, it's another noise filter, noise node. So you've got your white areas here and your black areas here. So where it's black, it's chunking, and where it's white, it ain't chunking. So if we put the overall scale down to 1, now white, black, white, black. So you can do a lot of things with the random chunks. You can play with them. You can do what you want. So that's that one. And I put these vertical and horizontal because I used these at some point for wood. I wanted some, you know, streaks, some vertical streaks. So if you, I think, wait, which one? I need the vertical scale bigger, so 0.1. I knew I'd do it the wrong way. 1.1. So yeah, it gives it this etched effect. So it's kind of like tree bark. If I put that up to 5, it'd probably be more visible. I mean, obviously, I've gone crazy with the displacement, but that's what that does. Take chunks out of it, and you got control of both of these. So let's put the scale back. As I say, that's really useful for just making terrain or ground. You know, I don't like the scale ever being that high, but I normally, when I use it, I've normally got it around here, scale 2. So that's the random chunks. Crack shape ramp, same again. We got your white position 2, your black position 1. If we took away the black by going back to 0, you know, it's much softer. But then if we made the meet in the middle, so let's go 0.2 and then white position 2, 0.3, the contrast is returning and nothing happens. Why'd that happen? That was not expected. Go back to 1. Let's see where I went wrong. So 0.4 and 0.42. Okay, now it's, yeah, there you are. There you are. That is dramatic contrast. It's just chunk. Take a chunk. Yeah. So, but obviously I don't think anyone would need it. Well, you could if you wanted. Who knows what you're making, but I like to have it a bit smooth. Like it is. Okay, random chunks, done. Finale is the easiest of all of them. It's the depth distortion. Crack that in. Like that. Does that. We could put more strength on it so you can really see it. Excuse me. It's just wobbling. Just wobbling the geometry, really. Again, it's not necessarily useful for a, for a brick wall, but it is useful for other materials that you might make. And these controls, again, you can see it's another noise filter. The areas that are sticking out are likely white, and the areas that are jumping in there are likely black. So, yeah, it's a noise filter. I mean, again, if we really whack up strength, yeah, there you go. I mean, it looks like a noise filter, doesn't it? Pretty much. If we put 16, let's see what happens. As expected, it becomes a bit. We got the roughness. It's all the same. You get it. And the the color ramp again. It's set to be kind of smooth. You know, as to make the contrast by just bringing these two values closer together. That's it. That's the Displacement FX. Done. It didn't take that long. No, it didn't. Okay, so we've done that. And then the next one we're going to do is Bump FX, because this is kind of the order I end up working in. I make my shape. If I needed displacement, then I go over to Bump, and then I go over Color Effects. So we'll just do that. We'll go from Displacement FX into Bump FX. So I will see you at our next venture. Bump FX. Until then, farewell.